Hey kiddos, today we are going to be working again on our poetry writing in our big blue poetry book. Please get this out because I want you to flip back to the page from your first lesson of this week in writing when we wrote those big feeling poems. You might want to change your big feeling poem a little bit just to edit it based on what we are going to learn right now. Here is our learning target for today. I can show, not tell, in my poetry writing. If you are thinking to yourself, I have no idea what that means, that's okay. We're going to look at it together. Puedo mostrar, no decir. Here we go. There are some ways that we are going to show and not tell. Here are some of the strategies we're going to use. We are going to try to describe what the scene looked like, kind of paint a picture in our audience's mind so that they can really picture everything that was happening in that memory, in that feeling. Write a comparison. We'll take a look at examples. Use line breaks and punctuation to show feeling. Do you remember in our first writing lesson of this week, we saw punctuation can be used to express how the author was feeling. There was that poem called Curly Fries, and the poet used exclamation points and all capital letters to show that she was really angry. Line breaks are something that we've talked about last week, so you can go back to the videos from last week. Line breaks are where poets, they chop up their poem into different lines in order to express more importance on certain words. Let's take a look at some comparisons and how authors have described what the scene looked like in their poem for their big feelings. We're going to look at an example of a poem down here, and we'll read that in just a second. But first, let's look at some examples. These aren't necessarily poems, but there's some good examples about the difference between what it looks like to show as a writer versus tell as a writer. So this was one of the examples I wanted us to look at. This is an example of how this writer wanted to show what was going on. Brian pierced his lips and clenched his fists into tight balls. Try as he might, he could not contain himself. Within seconds, he erupted like a volcano. That was all a really good description. We were learning about what it looked like. Remember, this is describe what the scene looked like. The author described that he clenched his fists into tight balls. This was an example of showing rather than telling. Telling would be Brian was angry. He started to yell. I like this. This was more interesting for me to read. I liked how the author described the scene for me. For me as the audience member, I preferred this one. Let's look at a couple other examples. Ooh, I like this one as a comparison example. A gigantic grin spread across Bailey's face, and her eyes lit up like the sky on the 4th of July. On the 4th of July, we have fireworks, and they're very bright in the dark sky. So her eyes lit up like that. This is an example of a comparison. Her eyes lit up like fireworks on the 4th of July. This was a great description of this feeling. Bailey was happy. I really enjoyed reading this example over just Bailey was happy. It's just a little bit more boring. Here's the poem that I wanted to share today. It's called Since You Moved. And this is a big feeling that we talked about on our first video of this week, because a lot of us have experienced this when a good friend of ours has moved to a different school or different place, and we don't get to see them as much. So this is a feeling that I think we can all relate to, and that's why I wanted to use this as an example. I feel like a sock without a match. Brown, brown, red, red, yellow, yellow, blue. I am alone now. I miss you. This is by a poet named Amy Ludwig van Deerwater. And I liked Amy's poem for lots of different reasons. She did a good job of showing when she used line breaks to express her feelings. She really wanted to show us what the socks were like, how socks normally they go together, two socks go together. So the brown and the brown, red and the red, yellow, yellow. Then all of a sudden she does this line break right here. And the blue just looks all by itself on that line. The word blue is all by itself. That's how she feels. She even said, I am alone now. But she didn't even need to say that because I understood just from the way she wrote the poem that she was feeling very lonely. Writers, when you go back to edit your big feelings poem in your super duper blue poetry book, or if you decide to write another big feeling poem and try to incorporate some showing versus telling, remember to try these things. Describe what the scene looked like, write a comparison, use line breaks and punctuation to show feeling. Ready, set? I can show, not tell in my poetry writing. Can't wait to see what you come up with. You guys are doing awesome. Have fun.